And it looks like we're live. I'm going to try holding the mic this time to see how I like it because this is my third video today, and so I decided to mix it up. And I decided to tell you because I like to fill time on the live stream to let people join. Hello, Corbin. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and hop into some stats. Honestly, it's going to I'm probably going to sound like I'm saying the same stuff that I said last game because the games are really similar. Um, Obviously, Donovan Mitchell didn't play again. Derek Favors didn't play again, so it's the same rosters. I don't think there's any change to the Mavs roster. Minutes were a little different. We saw Juwan Morgan play a lot more for the Jazz tonight, and he had a really good game, so we'll get into that later. But as usual, I like to start with the team stats, and then we'll hop over to the box score. Anyone who is on, go ahead and leave your comments, questions in the chat section. I wouldn't be surprised if not many people hop on tonight, so this might be a shorter video. Obviously, most people who will hear this will hear it after the live stream, so you will know if I'm right or wrong about this before you even click on the video. But I'm expecting it's going to be a little shorter because it's a later one and more of the same because they just beat the Mavs with the same lineup. But let's look at the team stats. The Jazz, it was another thing where field goals looked almost exactly the same. The Mavs shot 37 for 86, and the Jazz shot 38 for 87. So the Jazz just shot one more and made one more. But where the Jazz really beat the Mavericks were, again, free throws and three-pointers. The Jazz hit 23s, which is like digging into those weird stats that people like to bring up for basketball. The Jazz had 7 games this month in January 2021 where they had 23s or more, which is an NBA record. So the Jazz are a record-setting team for three-pointers again this year, which surprising. Like going in, I knew they had good three-pointers and I knew they were going to shoot more, but I wasn't really expecting them to do like this good, hitting 23s all the time. They also were really good on free throws tonight. Rudy was hitting his free throws, which was awesome. They shot 24 for 26, and they got to the line a lot because the Mavericks, they came out and they played really aggressively. Not really in the first quarter, more in like the second and probably beginning of the third quarter because they knew they were down. They knew they had to do something to get ahead, and that just led to more fouls. They got in foul trouble early in almost every quarter, which sent the Jazz to the line. So, yeah, more of the same. Like the game looked really similar stat-wise as far as the teams go. It's just the Jazz hit more threes and the Jazz went to the free throw line more. And that's really what it came down to. Turnovers is something I'm going to keep bringing up with the Jazz. When they do good, I'll congratulate them. When they have a lot, then I'll bring it up as it's something to work on. More often than not this season, they've needed to work on it. But I feel like this total turnover number doesn't tell the whole story for the Jazz. They had 15 turnovers, which isn't awful. Obviously, I'd like to see it lower. But 7 of those were in the second quarter. And the Jazz had a pretty bad second quarter. So if you just take away that one quarter, that's 8 turnovers for the other 3 quarters, which... So for most of the game, they were really good. It's just they had a sloppy second, which, like, I guess I'm fine with. They ended up winning the game. Obviously, something that when you play tougher teams and when it comes to playoffs, sometimes a tough quarter like that second quarter might be the game, even if you had a great first quarter like the Jazz had. So something the Jazz need to work on. Obviously, I don't think it's going to kill their season, but it may kill their chance to make it to the Western Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals. Going through the rest, Jazz had the lead all game. It's really similar to last game stat-wise. I'll hop over to the box score because that's where we did see some difference as far as the Jazz. Again, with the Mavericks, it was basically I almost said Donovan Mitchell. Luka Doncic basically scored all their points. He had 25 points, and the Mavs had a few other players in double digits, but they were really low double digits. They had 2 with 11, with 10, and 1 with 13. So not too exciting there. I won't spend more time on the Mavs because it's the Jazz we're here to talk about, and they're more fun. So Bogdanovic, he's kind of had some slow games. Tonight he was awesome. I think he's just kind of going to be streaky this season. Maybe he'll find his rhythm and really be consistent. But it's awesome to see him have a game like this. 7 for 11 from the 3-point line, 10 for 16 overall for field goals. He finished with 32 points, which was awesome. And he'll probably just be streaky. The good news is the Jazz have enough scorers that if Bogdanovic has an off game, there's plenty of other people to pick up his slack, even when Donovan Mitchell's out, like he has been for the past 2 games. So excited to see Bogdanovic. I would not expect this consistently, at least not yet. Maybe give him some time and he'll start doing this later in the season. But I think also with how their team is kind of made, they're a very unselfish team, and if one player's hot, they'll give him the ball and let him keep shooting. So if you have someone like Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, or Donovan Mitchell coming out and just hitting all the shots, Bogdanovic just might not get as many shots, which will lead to slower games for him. But overall for the Jazz, great team effort. Mike Conley put in 22 points. Rudy Gobert had a 17 and 12. Jordan Clarkson gave us what we expected from him with his 18 points. And Juwan Morgan, he had an unexpectedly good game. He got 7 rebounds, 3 steals, and he finished with 12 points on 5 for 8 shooting. So it's awesome to see that, like Juwan Morgan, he typically doesn't get many minutes. He had 21 tonight, just because the Jazz have had a lot of games recently and some injuries. So I'm sure Quinn Snyder was trying to spread the minutes out a little more. And I'm not sure if it was because he was having a good game that he got a boost in minutes, but glad to see that for him. Oni, he got 11 minutes, which he normally does. He normally gets a handful if he gets any, but he's another one of those players for the Jazz that he's not really a box score player, but he does make good plays. So I liked what I saw out of him. Got 4 rebounds and assist. So happy with the Jazz. It's the same as what we saw like last game against the Mavs. Not much more to report on. I guess it's time to look forward towards the game against the Nuggets. And that one, I believe, is also nationally televised. So it's kind of weird that the Jazz have 2 nationally televised games right in a row. But looking good, 11 in a row. Last Saturday, my prediction was that the Jazz would hit 10, and then they'd either lose this game against the Mavs or lose the game against the Nuggets. But with how they've been playing, even without Donovan Mitchell and Derek Favors, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep this winning streak going for quite a bit longer. And if they do that, they might prove to the rest of the league that them having the best record right now isn't just a fluke, that they really are a legit contender. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do. I really do think they're getting better every game, and I'm really optimistic about these next few games for them. But that being said, I will hop into the comments. If you haven't liked the video, like the video. If you're not subscribed and you like the Jazz, make sure to subscribe. We do a post game after every Jazz game, and then we do 1 or 2 videos on top of that a week, just giving some overview and some more thoughts that we don't always give on these live streams. But I'll hop into the comments. If you have any questions, leave them there and I'll try to get to them. Last game against the Mavs, it was awesome because normally these live streams, they go a little over 20 minutes and then we kind of run out of content and stop it there. But last game against the Mavs, I was going for over 40 minutes, and I don't know if I'll do that tonight. It's Friday and it's already late, and I'm guessing not too many people are hopping on. But that was awesome, and I'd love to see that happen more often. So I'll hop into the comments now, and if you have anything specific, make sure to leave it there, and I'll try to get to it. Um, let's see. And I think there's been some conversation going on that, so like, will Spider be back? I don't know. When I heard that he was out last game, I expected that he would be back this game. He wasn't. We haven't really. I don't think they've really given us much to go off of. It's all just speculation. So again, I'm expecting him to be back. I believe it's Sunday against the Nuggets. If he isn't, then we might have something to be worried about, that he might be out for potentially like a couple weeks or more. So I'm anticipating that he'll be back against the Nuggets, though. So I'm not too worried yet until the Jazz make a statement and say something. But they haven't said he has a concussion. They just say concussion protocol. So that's something to be optimistic about his return, hopefully soon. Juwan Morgan was good, and that block on Porzingis should have been clean. I don't remember the block specifically. I'm trying. I know I did see some plays that the refs, they were whistle happy tonight, and so I did see some plays that I don't think they should have called it. Generally, I'd rather a little bit of a rougher basketball and just kind of have the refs let the players play. I do understand, I think they came in whistle happy, but there were times that the Mavericks were a little aggressive, which kind of led to some Jazz players being aggressive. So there were a lot of fouls, and that was probably why there were some bad calls as well, because they were just trying to call everything to make sure it didn't get out of hand, which isn't the most entertaining, but it's whatever. I'll take it. The Jazz won by 19. I'll call it right now. Jazz are a first seed lock this year. That's a pretty bold prediction, but with the way they're playing, it's a possibility. I'm not saying, I don't think they're a lock. I wouldn't say they're anything close to a lock, actually. But maybe they're like the Nuggets have been for the past few years, where they're really fighting for that first seed and they may end up with it. So I'm hoping that they turn out to be better than the Nuggets the last few years, because the Nuggets, they had a good run last season in the playoffs. Jazz almost got them, but we won't dwell on that. But I'm hoping the Jazz can make that kind of run and then make it further into the finals. But there's still a lot of work to do and a long way to go. So they weren't favorites coming in, so they need to keep earning that title throughout this whole season. I scrolled too far and I got lost. Okay, so they have a pretty good schedule coming up. I think they beat the Bucks. They beat the Bucks earlier. So the schedule coming up, I know they have the Nuggets next. I talked about that. After that, it's, I think, the February, until February 7th, which is about a week after the Bucks game. I think the first is Monday. So they have a few easy games until they get to the game on the 7th, and then is it the Pacers on the 7th, and then we have all right in a row. I don't remember the order, but they have to play the Bucks, they have to play the Heat, they have to play the Lakers, the Clippers, the Sixers. So they have some tough games coming up. Hopefully they can ride the momentum. I don't think they'll keep the winning streak going super far into that, because if you have that many tough games in a row, it's just tough to keep it going, even for the best teams. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. We'll see what happens. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I can't believe the Jazz right now. My heart is literally swelling at this point. I can't contain the excitement. It's funny. I'll tell a quick story from work. One of my coworkers, she's enjoys basketball, but she was telling me that she's like, "Oh, the Jazz won 10 in a row. This is crazy. I'm going to watch their game tonight." And I thought it was funny, like all of Utah is just jumping in on the Jazz now that they're winning, and I guess that's what happens every time when you have a team win. And so then it brought up some conversation about the Jazz, and yeah, and since I've been doing this show, I have tons of predictions and tons of takes on everything. So I felt a little overqualified for that conversation, but it is awesome to see what the Jazz are doing. Um, are the Jazz better than the Bucks? Honestly, I think yes. I think they are better. The Bucks have the better player in Giannis, but to be honest, I I just don't feel like the Bucks do have other good players. They have Chris Middleton. They have Drew Holiday. I don't feel like the total of those players like combined is better than the total of the players of the Jazz combined. And even if you take it like I know this is kind of weird. It's not like straightforward talk, but I think that the Jazz, with how their roster is built, each of the players make each other better. And I think with how the Bucks roster is built, it's just not uh, like you're not getting the most out of every player. And so it's making Giannis look great, which he is that great of a player, but it's also I feel like it's not letting the other players really do what they're best at. So I do think the Jazz are better than the Bucks. Also, it might be a little unfair because they have matched up really well against the Bucks in years past, including this year so far. But yeah, that's my take on it. You can agree or disagree. Um, the Jazz are the best team in the NBA, and after they beat the Lakers, the rest of the world will know it. I hope they beat the Lakers, but having the best record does not always mean the best team. Right now, they are the hottest team, but I am optimistic on the Jazz. I'm not ready to say that they're definitely the best team yet. If they do beat the Lakers and they keep winning like this, then I'd be convinced. So if they do continue this winning, beat the Lakers, have some solid games against tougher teams like the Celtics, even if like it's a 1 point game against the Celtics, like you lose some tough games, but you can still be the best team and win that. So they'll have to prove that to me a little more. But yeah, we'll see. Um, and we're having some back and forth about the concussion with Mitchell. I haven't heard anything. Last I heard, it was he's in concussion protocol. They haven't confirmed that it is a concussion. I may be wrong and miss something, but hope it's nothing. And if it isn't concussion, I'm sure it will be wider spread news here in the next few days before the Denver game. So I I haven't heard anything, so I don't know how concussion protocol works. So it's all really speculation. I'd have to look into that to see like exactly what he has to go through medically, and if it's like I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure there's someone out there who could explain that better than me. I'm not a medical guy. um, is Gobert top 3 center in the league? This is a tougher question because centers like it is a little more positionless. And so it's like, do you count Anthony Davis as a center or a power forward? Because I feel like he's naturally a center, but he likes to play power forward. Um, but as far as other centers that you might put up on that list, like obviously Jokic has to be up there. If you consider Anthony Davis a center, he would. I'd probably put him at number 1. There's Embiid. You could argue Davis versus Embiid for number 1. Bam with the Heat. I don't think he'd be top 3 conversation. He might be in a few years. So I guess it depends on how you define how you define Anthony Davis's position. But still, Gobert, and then it also comes down to Gobert versus Jokic. So it's a tough question because it does depend on what you're counting, both what you're counting as positions, but also what you're counting as far as what are you looking for in a center, what counts the best center. If you really just want someone who can lock down the paint on defense, then yeah, I think Gobert's 100% a top center, no questions asked. But what he provides in offense, he shows that he can be good, even great some games, but it's not the same as like what Embiid is bringing game in, game out. So, in my opinion, I would probably argue, as far as right now, what I've seen this season, I'd probably say he sneaks into that third spot as far as top three. I'd put, if you're counting Anthony Davis as a center, I'd put him and Embiid above. And I'd probably rank Gobert slightly above Karl Anthony Towns and Jokic. That might just be me favoring defense over the offense because those two centers are very offensively minded and really aren't great defenders. Is Spide an all-star lock? I'd say probably not a starter lock. He might be, but I don't really see a world where he doesn't make it to the all-star game. Gobert's more questionable as far as an all-star lock. And Captain Rex, you had a few more questions. We have top three backcourt. Are we better than the Sixers, and are we the best team in the NBA? I address the best team in the NBA. So I'll touch on the Sixers. I really haven't watched much from the Sixers. I know they have a good record. They've been playing really good basketball. I like the Jazz over the Sixers, and as far as just on paper and from what I've seen, it is tough though because the Sixers do have star power, and that's sometimes the Jazz have it, and sometimes they don't. To be honest, because I know Mitchell, he is a superstar, but there have been some games where he just hasn't shown up this season, and I haven't followed the Sixers enough to know if like Simmons and Embiid are the same way. But I would say the Jazz are better than the Sixers, but we'll see that play out. It's still pretty early on, and I haven't watched much from the Sixers. So Keenan, he said Gobert's top 3 or 4 with Jokic and Embiid, and depending on how you count AD. Yeah, I would say that. I guess that's kind of what I concluded. It also comes down to, do you prefer Jokic or Gobert? Because I think they're both awesome centers, but they bring you very different things. Yeah, Jokic is like purely offense, amazing passer, good shooter. I wouldn't say he's like great or like, maybe even just a decent shooter, but then also just his paint game. I like Gobert. Maybe that's me just being a little old school and favoring the defense. Let's see. It's scrolling fast. AD is a power forward in my opinion. That's personally, I'd probably say he's a center, but I think he does play power forward, and I think that's how he came into the league, was as a power forward. And it is kind of going positionless at this point. That's kind of why the All-Stars aren't like choose your favorite position. Choose your favorite player. Each position is just like front court, back court, which I do like. Let's see. The Jazz are just getting better and better every game, and to beat Dallas back to back without their star Don. That was awesome, honestly. So it was awesome that they beat Dallas, because Dallas, they're going to be a playoff team, even though they're not really looking like it right now. I would be really surprised if Dallas doesn't make it. At the same time, Dallas isn't playing like a playoff team right now. So, and that might just be the Jazz are that good and make them look silly, which would be awesome for the Jazz. So I'm going to take both these wins with a grain of salt. I'm excited about them keeping the winning streak going, but Dallas, they haven't really been looking good. They have had some both injuries and COVID issues, so there's that to take into account. But still, Like Luka, he didn't even like do great against them. Like he did what you kind of expect. So that's another thing to consider, that Gobert, he actually did, like, Gobert isn't the one guarding Luka one on one, but it's really him who keeps. I think it was him this game in particular who kept Luka more contained, kept him only down to 25 points, which obviously you can't stop him every time, but he did a good job at making his shots tough. So yeah, I'm excited for the Jazz. What is the ceiling of this team? Um, well, yeah, I think the ceiling is a championship. Whether, like, how realistic that is another question. We can get into that. We'll see how it plays out. Expectations coming in is uh, coming into the season, we thought they were definitely like top three in the West. Definitely top four, hopefully top three, which means second round of the playoffs, hopefully Western Conference Finals. But with how they've been playing, obviously they've outperformed kind of what we thought. So, and that's so far this season. So I think ceiling is definitely an NBA championship. Even without injuries, I'd say that's still their ceiling. Every game the Jazz have gone on a 10-0 run. Yeah, so winning streak is awesome. Rudy may not be the best center, but is the defensive player of the year, hands down. I don't think he'll win it. I think you can make a really solid argument that he actually is the best defensive player. I think it also comes into account that he did win 2 in a row, and people kind of get bored of seeing the same person win it over and over again, especially when Rudy's not a huge fan favorite. So I don't think Rudy will win the Defensive Player of the Year this year. He might. He's definitely good enough to. But I think you can really make a solid argument that he impacts the defense of a team more than any other player, especially like a contending team like the Jazz. Let's see. What do I think about Bogey looking like he did last year? I touched on this at the beginning. It might have been kind of too early before people had time to hop onto the live stream. But I think, like, obviously, I think Bogey had an awesome game. 7 for 11 from 3, 10 for 16 from the floor overall. He had 32 points. And I just think with how this team is constructed, you will see him having on and off games. And that, I don't think that's necessarily him trying to get back from his injury or trying to find his rhythm. It could be maybe he just hasn't found his rhythm, and maybe as he eases into it, he'll keep this going. But I think it's just how the team is constructed. There's enough offensive weapons that they'll just kind of go with a hot hand. And if Conley starts off hot, then they'll keep feeding the ball to Conley, and then that means Bojan doesn't get as many touches, which I'm fine with. I love, like, if there's not many teams where you can just say whoever gets the touches as long as we win. I feel like too many teams that are actually contenders, they have egos of their stars that get in the way. Like probably the most famous example of that is the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, where like Phil Jackson had to go to Kobe and say, "Hey, like, you need to feed Shaq more. Like he's getting bored," and that's just what happens. So if the Jazz can really like make a contender where it just doesn't really matter who scores, that is an awesome environment, and that's going to be attracting the right kind of players to the Jazz, because the Jazz really aren't a marquee free agent destination. But if you can get that talent that agrees with that, then that may be more important than landing a star in free agency, especially for a team like the Jazz who tries to build through the draft. Do I think Juwan Morgan should play more? I think I would like to see just more of the bench play more. It is tough because the Jazz do have a pretty deep bench, and there's only so many minutes in the game. And when you're trying to keep a winning streak going, like, there's only you can't be super liberal with the minutes that you're giving out. And I think there's a lot of players on the bench that could deserve more minutes. in games like this where you're missing two key players that like take up a lot of the minutes, I would love to see Juwan Morgan play more. But maybe once Mitchell's back, once Favors is back, uh, I'd probably rather see those minutes go somewhere else because Clarkson has been getting more minutes with Mitchell out. So I'd rather see Clarkson out on the floor than Juwan Morgan in most situations. So that's not really a straightforward yes or no, but it is kind of situational. Um, yeah, this was a late one, so I'll probably end it there. We got 30 minutes in, which was awesome. Tomorrow we'll be releasing a video. It normally releases around 11 or 12. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe. That way you and hit the notification bell if you haven't. That way you get notified of that video as soon as we release it. If you have any other questions, make sure to just leave it in the chat of this video. It should let you, even though the live streams are kind of weird. Like I said on YouTube, sometimes it doesn't um, show up immediately. But if you're on the live stream right now, you should be able to leave comments. If you can't, I'll just leave it on another video and we can answer those there. We'll see the notification either way, whether it's this video or another. But everyone, thanks for tuning in. Here's to 11 games. That was an awesome win by the Jazz. And have a good Friday night.